I knew the evening would go wrong the moment I stepped through my daughter's front door and felt the temperature drop, not the air conditioning, but the silence that followed me like a shadow. At 80 years old, you learn to read rooms better than people. And that night, the room was screaming at me long before anyone opened their mouth. My name is Grandpa Haroon, and this is the story of the night my family told me the truth I had been too blind to see, and how I finally found the strength to do something about it. The dinner was meant to be a celebration of sorts, my birthday, though no one bothered with balloons or flowers. I came dressed in my best grey coat, polished shoes, and the old wristwatch my late wife gifted me decades ago. It seemed foolish now how I still tried to impress people who hardly noticed I was alive. Everyone was already seated around the table. My daughter Aisha, her husband, and my 2 grandsons. They gave me half-hearted smiles, the kind people reserve for a stranger who walked in by mistake. "Dad, you made it," Aisha said, standing just long enough to give me an air kiss before returning to her phone. "I did," I replied, forcing a smile as I lowered myself into the empty chair. The food was good, the company was not. They talked over me, around me, and occasionally through me, but never to me. I chewed silently, pretending not to notice that no one asked how I was doing, whether I was comfortable in my small apartment, or if the arthritis in my knees still kept me awake at night. Questions like that required care, and care was something they had long run out of. Halfway through dinner, my older grandson, Daniel, asked loudly, "So, is Grandpa staying for dessert or leaving early? You know how he gets tired." They laughed. I smiled, pretending my heart wasn't cracking like fragile glass. But the worst came shortly after. Aisha sighed dramatically, as if doing charity. "Dad, to be honest, we only invited you because it would have looked bad if we didn't. The neighbors already talk." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Her husband chuckled. "Exactly, people pity old folks living alone. This is for appearance, not sentiment." "Pity." The word dropped onto the table like a hammer. I looked at each of their faces. Not one flinched, not one realized or cared what they had said. I set my fork down slowly. For the first time in years, I felt my spine straighten, my breath deepen, my voice return. "I see," I said quietly. Aisha waved a hand. "Dad, don't overreact. We're just being honest." Honest, that strung even more. It wasn't the insult alone. It was that they believed I should thank them for it. I stayed until the end of the meal, nodding and smiling like a polite guest in someone else's life. But as soon as I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, and something inside me shifted. I had given them everything, my youth, my sweat, my savings, the home they grew up in, the education they bragged about, and still I had become a burden in their eyes. "Pity." The word echoed. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I visited my lawyer, a kind man who had handled my affairs since the years when my legs were strong and my heart wasn't so tired. "I want to revise my will," I told him. He blinked. "Are you sure, Mr. Haroon? It leaves everything to your daughter and her family." "Cross them out," I said, my voice steady, "every last one." He studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Who would you like to include instead?" I thought of all the people who had shown me small acts of kindness without any obligation. The young neighbor boy, Ali, who carried my groceries upstairs every Thursday. The widow down the hall who brought me soup when she heard I was coughing. The community library, where I spent hours reading and donating old books, because the librarian treated me with more respect in a single conversation than my own children had in years. "Divide it among them," I said, "and anything left, give it to the shelter." When I left the office, the sun felt warmer than usual. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. It didn't take my family long to notice. 3 weeks later, Aisha called me in a voice filled with panic. "Dad, did you change your will? The lawyer called for confirmation. What is this nonsense?" I sipped my tea calmly. It's not nonsense, it's clarity. You can't be serious, her husband shouted in the background, after everything we've done for you. Done, I interrupted sharply. You mean the pity invitations, the sidelined conversations, the reminders that I'm a burden. Ayesha went silent. I continued, my voice firmer than it had been in years. I came to that dinner hopping for family. Instead, I found the truth. And the truth is, I don't owe you anything, not my house, not my savings, not my loyalty. You're overreacting. No, I said, standing by the window, watching a flock of birds fly freely across the sky. I'm finally reacting. There's a difference. There was heavy breathing on the other end, then shouting, then bargaining. But I heard none of it. My heart was peaceful. I wish you well, I said softly, but I won't be used. And I hung up. In the weeks that followed, my small apartment felt less empty. Ali visited more often, bringing fresh fruit from the market. The librarian invited me to speak at a seniors' reading group. The widow down the hall taught me how to make her special lentil soup. These weren't people who pitied me. These were people who valued me. One evening, sitting by my window with a warm cup of tea, I realized something important. Family isn't defined by blood, but by compassion. My own blood relatives had pushed me out of their hearts long ago. I had simply returned the favor in paperwork. And for the first time since my wife passed, I felt alive again. Not out of pity, but out of choice.